Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's episode of Trending, brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off. 7th of July, mate.
It is, yeah, 20 years. 20 years since the 7/7 attacks in London. 3 tube trains and a bus. I remember it vividly. I was in year 6 at the time at school, and I remember just after lunch, our teacher coming in and saying that this had happened. So obviously in those days, I sound well old now, don't I? There wasn't really, no one had phones and stuff, so you didn't hear about stuff till you got home. And it kind of felt like England's version of 9/11 to an extent, where there was a major attack in a capital city and lots of people lost their lives. And again, like 9/11, you don't have to do too much research and investigation into it to see that the official narrative and official story of what happened makes pretty much zero sense. They were doing a drill at exactly the same time, exactly the same stations, which again seems to be a common theme among these false flag attacks. And it created more anger, and it created more, appetite for what was going on in the Middle East at the time, where it was claimed, and even today I see people tweeting about it, talking about Islamic terrorists did this, did that in London. When, again, like with 9/11, there's a lot of evidence to suggest actually it wasn't them at all, or it certainly wasn't solely them. They were part of something much bigger. I think the intelligence services, MI5, were almost certainly involved here. The big one I remember at the time, you might remember this, is the lads that supposedly did it parked up in Luton, didn't they, and then got the train down into London. But they paid for parking. Why would you have done that if you were about to go into London to blow yourself up? I remember at the time, even as a kid, thinking, that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that?
Well, there's lots of things that didn't add up. If you look at some of the photos of the CCTV footage of them walking into the station, there's like barriers in places like where they basically go through the midriff of the person, where it's blatantly been photoshopped.
Yeah.
So, I was in London on 7/7. I was in London on the 21st as well when there was the follow-up bombings, and we ended up getting reported because we had a tour bus which we parked basically in South London, and then we would drive through Stockwell and Oval and all these places.
Yeah, that was hit, wasn't it?
Into up the Hackney Road, and we were recording in Hoxton Square, so we ended up getting reported, we had the police kick in the door of our then driver in South Wales, demanding from his mother to tell them where he was, and she replied, "Well, you know where he is. He's in London. That's why you're here." It's a very good point.
Context is he was ex-military.
He was ex-military, yeah, and someone had reported our bus for basically being, in places that, and it was a bit of a weird. I mean, it was this big, massive, old age concerned bus that was full of lads that all had beards, and in the end, we ended up with our bus surrounded by armed police. Yeah, it was a crazy time.
Yeah, I do remember that story.
Yeah,
quite an interesting one.
Very strange. I thought they were going to kill Taffy. Nigel, his name is, but he's Welsh, so you call him Taffy, obviously. Because this was about less than a week after they killed John Charles de Menezes.
Yeah.
Obviously, they shot him on a tube train in front of people about 8 times in the head. That would do it. He was guilty of nothing, of course, but yeah. So we actually really thought they were going to kill Taffy, but fortunately they didn't.
Yeah, but obviously our thoughts and condolences go out to anyone who lost their lives that day and the families that are still here 20 years later. And hopefully one day there'll be some justice for the people who are really behind things like that and all the other things that we've seen around the world in recent years and in the past history that's been caused by this cult. Just goes to show it's not since COVID. This is not not a new thing. This is, even 20 years is very new for them. There's things that go back years and years and decades back to First World War, Gulf of Tonkin, weapons of mass destruction, so many things.
I would recommend Loose Change, the documentary Loose Change. Obviously, people know about Loose Change in terms of 9/11, but there was a follow-up documentary about 7/7, which is definitely worth a watch. Okay, moving on then. Department of Justice, FBI conclude Jeffrey Epstein had no client list, and he committed suicide.
It's nice, open and shut. Nice.
So that's that then. Have you got any stories? Do you know what I mean?
It's amazing, isn't it?
What I want to know is why Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison then. Because she's in prison for aiding and abetting and supplying Jeffrey Epstein with clients that don't exist.
No, exactly.
So I suppose she'll be out soon.
Where's the little black book then? And the Lolita Express?
Do you know what?
The flight logs, where are they?
Well, the list was on Pam Bondi's desk. Just watch this.
I saw your appearance at CPAC with Ben and with Ted Cruz. And one of the things that you alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you.
There you go. So it turns out all it wasn't the Epstein client list. It was just a copy of James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl that was on her desk, and she'd got confused.
Roald Dahl gets more heat these days than Jeffrey Epstein, to be fair.
It probably does, yeah. It's mad, isn't it? Obviously, she sat there in that video you've just watched, and she's saying it's on our desk for review. What review means is we're just going to check, make sure there's nothing in here that we don't want the public to know. And obviously, there is. Lots of it, including, I imagine, Donald Trump, who spent a lot of time with Jeffrey Epstein, and Epstein, in his own words, described them as being very good friends for over a decade. But yeah, there we go. It's open and shut, mate. So nothing to see here. All good. Woohoo!
The joke is people, the Trump lot, as we've talked about previously, that they defend anything he does. They'll move on from this now. A lot of them
mate,
will.
I've seen
Some
it.
won't, but
I've seen it. I've seen people saying, well, Trump and America have got bigger fish to fry at the moment than this anyway, so it doesn't matter. I also saw someone, and this was amazing, on this news story, comment underneath it, say, well, if the Trump-run Department of Justice says there's no client list, then I believe it.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I've got an inflatable dartboard for sale if you want one.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. But then it's completely predictable for the reasons you mentioned there. Trump's clearly on the list. I mean, anyone that has done any research knows that and listens to Trump's own words. Like you said, they were good friends. And Epstein was an agent for a foreign country, but I don't know which one in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah, Dan Borghino doesn't know which one it is.
Everyone knows which one. Everyone knows which one. And you look at the relationship that Israel have with America, you look at the ownership they have over Donald Trump, you look at the influence they have over American politics in general, they're not going to want that coming out either. So therefore, it was never going to happen. It's just owning the narrative, absolutely owning the narrative. Like, you know, the best way to control something that you don't want to come out is say you're going to release it, but then you're in control of what is released. Hence why all this complete BS about we're going to release the JFK files. No, you're not, because again, that'll implicate Israel. You were going to
it did implicate Israel, the bit that they released, and that was the bit that no one talked about.
No, we're going to release this. No, you're not. You're going to let out what's acceptable. You had it over here, didn't you, with Operation U-Tree, that invested a few D-list celebrities but left out your major political players, your major people in influence that were definitely part of that Savile network. Own the narrative. Very simple. That's what they've done.
It's also like we spoke about at the time on Trending, on all our various shows on the channel. It was something we discussed a lot. And people call you a neg Nelly, black pilled and all that nonsense. Very boring, but whatever. We were saying that they're not going to release the list. There's no way they're going to release the list because it's a blackmail operation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why would you give up the list of names of people you're blackmailing and have control over? Because as soon as you've done that, it's done.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? You wouldn't. It's a Mossad CIA blackmailing operation, which is how a sliver of land the size of New Jersey has such incredible influence over the world. And everyone says, I don't understand how they've got so much power. I've got an idea.
Yeah.
It's called compromat, mate.
Exactly. It's like having a great hand at poker and folding before you win. No point. Why would you do it? Well, in other news, speaking of the Middle East, David Lammy, on the same week that the UK have declared Palestine Action a terrorist group, he's been over there getting friendly with actual terrorist groups. Now, I'm sure there's people within Palestine Action that will be calling for things that I wouldn't agree with, but as far as I'm aware, they've not chopped anyone's head off yet. However, the man that David Lammy is stood here, as you can see, shaking hands with, certainly has. So this is the story from Sky News. UK restores diplomatic ties with Syria. The UK has already lifted a number of sanctions following the USA did it a few weeks ago against Syria since the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime, and has suggested that rebel group HTS could be removed from the prescribed terrorist group. So he's at okay, they're still terrorists at the moment then, but he's still sat there cozying up to him. So they've re-established diplomatic relations 14 years after They broke them off when the civil war started in 2011, the civil war that was absolutely manipulated and manufactured by the West. See Iraq, see Libya, same principles were applied. So the interim president, now they keep saying interim president, but I've not heard any talks of an actual election or anything like that.
He's got his feet under the table, well and truly.
He's got his feet under the table. He's even on the poster that we showed the other day. You know, he's met Trump, he's been over and met the Saudis, he's met the Qataris, all of those people. So Ahmed al-Sharaa, who's also the leader of the rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, basically was the man that oversaw the overthrowing of the Assad regime a few months ago now, which was clearly, allowed to happen. It happened in a matter of days, didn't it? But since then, the rhetoric towards Syria has changed significantly from Western countries, because the rhetoric of Syria and him, a devout, fundamental Islamic terrorist, apparently, towards which country has it changed quite a lot? His rhetoric towards.
Well, he's going to normalise relations with Israel, isn't he? That I'm surprised that's not happened already. It will happen in the next 2 weeks, I'd say.
Israel, within a few days of him taking over, Israel had invaded further on from the Golan Heights, hadn't they, and occupied it, creating what they call buffer zones, which always seem to be in the territory of the other nation, never their own.
Yep.
To protect their own regime against what had happened in Syria of the fall of Assad and any fallout from that. Silence from the Syrian regime, the new Syrian regime, absolute silence. They've not once said anything about Israel. They've not once talked about the fact that they are occupying large parts of their land and natural resources in the Golan Heights. So therefore, he's clearly just a puppet of the West. And this is something we've spoke about previously, that good guy, bad guy depends very much what the day of the week is. So for weeks, this guy was a terrorist. He was this, he was that. For years. And now all of a sudden, happy days. He's done what we needed him to do. The organisation have got rid of Assad, which is what they wanted for a very long time. And as a result, now he's going to get rewarded in kind. And here you go. He's probably going to become a very wealthy man as a result of it. He's going to have power over certain parts of Syria, providing he sticks in his box and does what the cult wants him to do. He's probably going to live a nice, prosperous life. While the people of Syria, once again, as this is always the case, you can apply this same argument we talk about now. You can apply it to Iran. It's not quite there yet, but it could be, where it's the civilian population that will suffer no matter what the outcome of this conflict is. In the same way that Syria has been absolutely decimated, bombed into absolute smithereens, incredible cities and history, cities like Aleppo and Palmyra and these incredible places, Damascus, where, through biblical texts and ancient texts, these are incredible cities and places with these incredible temples and libraries and monuments and so on that have been completely destroyed. And the population are essentially fighting just to survive, whether there's food shortages, fuel shortages, people can't leave the country, they can't travel, people are struggling to build any kind of life because they don't know what's coming next. And we've seen since he's taken over power, minorities in Syria, whether they be Christians, which funnily enough, the Christian right in America and Britain seem to be very quiet about. They've been targeted, they've been massacred, they've been beheaded. And there's a lot of evidence that other minorities are also being targeted. Yet, it's okay. It's absolutely fine. It's a really, really sad scenario because once again, there will have been people in Syria that didn't like Assad and think genuinely overthrowing him was the right thing to do. And look what's been replaced with.
He's had a beard trim, so he's not a terrorist anymore.
No, and he's put a suit on. Zelensky needs to sort of take note because this guy's actually getting rid of the Action Man outfit and put on a suit.
Well, I don't know. I think Zelensky's doing all right, isn't he?
Yeah, he's probably got more money than this lad. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, they didn't oppose Israel's incursions into Syria because they were too busy killing Christians and Alawites. They were busy focusing on that. Like I said, they will normalise relations with Israel. I'm surprised they've not already done that. I imagine they will sign over the Golan Heights to Israel as well. In fact, I'm surprised not done that. They've already allowed the Israeli military to use their airspace to attack Iran.
Yeah,
it's just another puppet. Another puppet.
Another puppet.
That's what they want in Iran as well, by bringing the Shah's son back. It's another puppet of the West.
Well, yeah, and you can see then right throughout the Middle East, all the countries are being replaced with puppet regimes. So the Israeli influence, who's going to really oppose the Greater Israel project now? Because if you look at the countries that it takes up Lebanon, well, irrelevant as far as they're concerned. There's no fear there that Lebanon are going to do anything. As we mentioned last week, Hezbollah have completely stayed out of this conflict. They're going to take a large swathe of Syria, as we've established from this conversation. That regime's not going to oppose it. No. Jordan don't seem to oppose anything that Israel do whatsoever. And the northern part of Saudi Arabia, which they want as well, they're not going to oppose that, because as we've established through previous conversations, the Dhamma Jews that run Saudi Arabia are certainly not any followers of Islam, and they do pretty much what Israel says, which is why over the years, when Israel have created such instability and chaos in the Middle East against other Muslim nations, the Saudis say and do absolutely nothing. And they want large swathes of Egypt, which again, they'll take. So you're all of a sudden going to have puppet regime after puppet regime, especially if Iran falls. And what they're also doing, is the last thing to mention, is you're surrounding then Iran with regimes that are not going to support it should a wider conflict in the Middle East kick off, which in theory you think should have happened.
Yeah, they're cutting the balls off the resistance.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's basically what they're doing. This is what they've done in America. Donald Trump. Tony Blair.
Nice guy.
Yeah, the devil wears Prada. Tony Blair Institute linked to Gaza plan condemned as ethnic cleansing. Well, it is ethnic cleansing, that's why. The Tony Blair Institute has been linked to a project widely condemned for proposing the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, involving a sweeping post-war redevelopment of the besieged strip. Plans include a Trump Riviera.
Oh yeah, we saw that, didn't we?
And infrastructure named after wealthy Gulf monarchs, according to documents reviewed by the Financial Times and revealed on Sunday's The Vision. The Vision outlined a slide deck titled The Great Trust. It was created by a group of Israeli businessmen. So we've got Israeli businessmen in control of what's going to happen in Gaza. Ooh, I wonder who it's going to benefit. With support from consultants at Boston Consulting Group. The plan assumed that at least 25% of Palestinians would leave voluntarily. If you leave somewhere because you've been bombed and starved to within a millisecond of death, I'm not sure that's voluntary, really, if I'm honest, in terms of the definition of the word. With most never returning. Of course not, because they won't be allowed to return. Palestinians wouldn't have any choice in the matter. You surprise me. But the proposal has been widely condemned as ethnic cleansing. That's because that's exactly what it is. If Tony Blair's involved, it's never for the benefit of humanity. So anyone who is massively pro-Israel, which a lot of people now in the so-called alternative are, I'm not sure what your stance is on this then, because if the devil's involved, it's probably not good. This is a guy, of course, played a major role in killing over 1 million Iraqis in the Gulf War, based on a lie of weapons of mass destruction, which came from Benjamin Netanyahu. He started that. Brexit, obviously, he was massively against Brexit. He's massively pro-EU. In terms of COVID, he wanted vaccine mandates and all that kind of stuff. And the alternative hero, Nigel Farage, wanted him in charge of the vaccine rollout. He also wants digital IDs, and he's all for the net zero climate change scam. But I'm sure he's right and just on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've said it before about a lot of people. You know, we're talking about Epstein and compromat and stuff like that. There are people within the political establishment that are there because they've been caught doing naughty things with children. There's people there because they like the money and they like the power. Narcissistic morons like David Lammy. Who's just got just enough education to perform, but isn't really bright enough to ask any questions. And then there's others, which I think are probably a minority, which will work for the devil for free. And Tony Blair is one of them. That's not to say he's not an arsehole in other ways, but he's not there because of compromat and the money. He's there because he serves the devil and he does it happily.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. You've got to look at the guy's eyes. And hopefully, like you say, people who are supposedly alternative thinkers will look and go, okay, can I name a time in history previously where Tony Blair's been on the same side as me, or he's been on the side of what's right for humanity, and actually ask themselves, well, you know, like we've joked a few times about that scene from Are We the Baddies? It's like, well, that reevaluation then of looking at Tony Blair on the same side as you, going, am I on the wrong side here? Have I thought this through? Is there something I'm missing? You know, that's what needs to happen, 100%. I remember, funnily enough, the day after the Brexit vote, a very pro-EU person tweeting, saying, I've woken up to Brexit and I'm sad, and now I'm even more sad. I've just realised Tony Blair's on the same side as me. And it's true. And if he's on your side, you're in the wrong place, guys. Absolutely. And that's not to say, that's not something that should be revolutionary to say. Anyone that knows anything about the way the world has been in the last few years, since 97 when he won, you know that Tony Blair's, like you said, the devil incarnate. You know that he is. Look at what he's stood for. Look at what he's done. Look at what he's called for and pushed for and supported. Do you really want to stand shoulder to shoulder with him? It's not something you should feel comfortable doing. So
even
maybe reassess your position.
Even how he came into power. This is a man that joined the Labour Party. I think he was elected at the same time as Jeremy Corbyn, both elected into the Labour Party as an MP. John Smith was the leader of the Labour Party at the time. Many people that are supporters of Labour and old school Labour would point to John Smith as a very positive character in terms of a leader. Yeah. Then Tony Blair tells his wife and others that he's been told he's going to be the leader. He's going to be the new leader, which is quite strange because they don't need a new leader. They've got a new... Oh, John Smith's dead.
Yeah. That's an interesting one to say the least, isn't it? That's an interesting one to say the least. Just let that circulate and see what you think of that one. Right, we're going to finish the show on politics today, because there's the frenemies in America are out in full force once again. So the Trump-Musk collaboration was always going to end in this kind of way because you're dealing with two people with massive egos, but they're two people with massive egos that both work for the same people. So whatever you see in public in terms of the aggression and the rhetoric and the arguments and the squabbling and literally playground activity, behind the scenes they're both still working towards the same cause. So a story broke over the weekend about Musk officially announcing that he's going to form a new political party after a fallout with Trump. Musk said on Saturday night that he was going to create a new political party which he's going to call the America Party. He's been at odds with Trump since the One Big Beautiful Bill, which was signed into law on Friday, and has taken the term uniparty, described the term uniparty to describe both the Republicans and the Democrats, claiming that neither party is willing to deal with spending. Trump's obviously come out and said that Musk's deranged and unhinged and this is a joke and it will damage American politics and so on, when really what it's probably going to create is a situation where you have the alternative, and I use that word very loosely, thinkers who question a bit more than others, but certainly don't question Trump or Musk or any of the really important stuff. They question a little bit. They're going to now be split into two camps, but two acceptable camps as far as the cult's concerned, because neither of these guys are actually going to really expose anything, and both of them, as we've pointed out, are working for the same side, which is for the detriment of humanity, not the benefit. You've got your brain chip guy, and you've got another guy who's pushing AI. You've got a guy who's pushing further conflicts in the Middle East and gives Israel whatever they want. Neither of those things are beneficial for humanity. The grandfather of the vaccine as well, never forget that. As much as he will try and pretend that he's putting America health first, it's certainly not. He's the grandfather of that and still calls it his greatest achievement. And then you've got the brain chip guy that's calling for artificial intelligence to be more and more involved in our lives because it's inevitable apparently, and you might as well merge with it to save yourselves. It makes absolutely no sense. It's madness. But they're your two alternatives. They're your two options that people will have. So it will just split that resistance movement, if you want to call it that, not that it's become one anymore. And it's just going to create more arguments, more pointless rhetoric, while the agenda for the world continues in the same direction. It's not going to benefit anybody. It's going to be theatre, more theatre.
Well, it just corrals people back into the political sphere. You'd have had a lot of people have doubled and quadrupled down on Trump. But there's a hell of a lot, and it's growing. And this story today about the Epstein list that will sign off another few. Getting off the Trump train. So where do they go? If they start to fully wake up and realise that politics is theatre and it is a uni-party and all that kind of stuff, then, there could be some real change. Suddenly people stop playing the game. So you have Elon Musk come out and use the term uni-party to corral them back in, but to vote for him.
Yep.
So you're sucking people back into the political game again. So people can awake to something and they get sucked back in. It's the same happening in the United Kingdom with reform. People were done with Labour and Tories. It's the uni party. And so suddenly reform comes along. Oh, this is different. This is change. This is England first. This is mega. This is going to be amazing. And so they all jump on that. And then actually when you just literally scrape away a tiny little bit of veneer, you realise that actually the policies are exactly the same.
Yep.
Exactly the same as the uni party, but you've got those people back in the voting booth again. That's all this is about.
Yeah,
that's all it's about. And maybe there is an element of it that, depending on what goes on with the Democratic Party, whether they want them in next,
yes,
is another one. That maybe they do, and if they do, then maybe this splits the Republican vote. I don't know, because I think in terms of Rich used the analogy really well in terms of the right leg and the left leg. That actually, if you want to get to an end position, their agenda end position, if you try and go there with a giant leap of the right leg, people will resist. And you try and go there with a giant leap of the left leg, people will resist. But if you go a little step on the right and then you vote them out, and then the left come in, you go a little step on, they're awful, vote them out, get the right back in, they're in another step. And in the end, you realise that actually between the two of them, they've taken you to the destination anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also the great point you make is it's keeping people engaged enough in the political system to give it enough credibility that they can continue to claim authority. It's like, in this country, you saw Starmer with such a huge mandate with 9 million votes. You saw when Trump won the first election in 2016, the biggest percentage was nearly 50% that didn't vote. So he won election with 25 or 26% of the vote when he beat Clinton, of the overall vote of people that could have voted. It's very difficult. If that becomes 10%, how are you claiming the authority to run a nation?
Well, that's it.
Because
what people need to do.
That's exactly what needs to happen. Because imagine if you walk down the street and for every 100 people that are in the street, 90 didn't vote for the government that are in a position of power.
Yeah.
How are they claiming authority?
It's a big statement. I think the thing is as well, I don't know about you, maybe I'm just showing my age and therefore kind of seeing the past in slightly, lighter terms. But I don't remember, I've never liked politicians, they're all lying crooks, but they had a bit more about them in the past. And I remember talking to Lembit Opik actually about that very thing. He's a former MP, he was a Liberal Democrat MP. And he was saying in his day, like, they were all, scumbags, but they had something about them. Yeah. They had some charisma. You kind of followed them, you trusted them. And now you look at, David Lammy, Ed Miliband,
Liz Kendall,
all of these
Rachel
people,
Reeves, all of them.
You look at them and you think, do you know what? Like, I think the first real significant AIDS v cancer election was Clinton v Trump.
Oh yeah,
what a choice America had there. And then you think Trump v Biden,
and Trump v
Harris, and here Sunak v Starmer. Jesus wept.
Yeah. Just while we mentioned Rachel Reeves, just to finish the show, there's obviously she was seen crying in Parliament last week, which many of you will have seen the video. And since then, loads of people have come out and said, no matter what your politics, this is a woman crying. I actually, on the other end, I couldn't give a shit.
Well, she's crying about her own career.
She's crying about her own career, and look at what she's done to decimate the lives of so many people in the country. How many people are sat now terrified about October, about the budget, wondering how much less they're going to have in their pocket? I'm sorry, I worry more about people like that are struggling to put food on the table rather than some woman who's a millionaire, not qualified for the job, gets paid handsomely, is protected from really any backlash for her actions.
Lied on her CV.
I'm sorry, I don't really feel sorry for you. You can cry. Everyone cries.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
She didn't cry for the people she's ruining, lives she's ruining. She's crying because she thinks her career's going down the pan.
Exactly.
It's, and this is the thing, you see that all the time. See, it shows politicians are human. No, they're not.
Matt Hancock cried on national telly, apparently, over the vaccine. Do you think he meant that? No. I don't either. Embarrassing.
Don't even get me started on that guy. He needs firing from a cannon.
Right, well, thank you very much for tuning in with us this morning. You're going to be back this afternoon, aren't you, at 2 for Trending in the Afternoon?
Yeah, let's see what happens between now and then. As always, I will endeavour to find a positive story. I say it every week, and one day it's going to happen.
It is one day.
One day. Maybe they'll find the Epstein client list. Maybe it's behind the sofa. Maybe we'll find it around lunchtime. Who knows?
Thanks for tuning in with us, guys. See you later. Bye.
Cheers.